I saw that on my feed just before starting the stream, actually. And yeah, the classic WoW quit point. He's probably gonna talk about the quit point in that you can reach in multiple games, not just World of Warcraft, but specifically talking still about the problems that World of Warcraft has when it loses player. And I think that is an interesting title, and I wanted to watch it with you guys.
The quit point in games is that moment when you finally had enough. You exit out of a game and sometimes you don't come back. For many games, it's often tied to some kind of feeling of anger or frustration, which is of course rage quitting, whether that being Alt F4ing out of a Souls-like game after failing a boss for a dozenth time, closing League of Legends after having an evening of questionable teammates, or quitting Marvel Rivals after you face that OP metacomp one too many times in a row. A lot of games have these quit moments, and MMOs do as well. But unlike those aforementioned titles, quitting in an MMO is rarely an explosive moment of rage or something suddenly snapping. It's a slow and gradual grind to a stop where you realize, I don't really know what I want to log in for today. Now reaching this—
that's exactly how I left WoW. Every single time I left World of Warcraft or any other game, to be honest, I joined the game and I feel like I don't belong there. I don't know what to do. I feel disinterested. I just want to close the game and don't come back. It's always what happened.
Personal point of completion in an open-ended game such as an MMO, however, is natural, and it should be possible to some extent for a wide range of players. After all, by their nature, MMOs usually keep progressing so long as they are successful and are adding new patches. So plenty of people give it a go after they see there's something new, they play the patch for a bit, they cancel their sub, and they wait for the next patch to come around. Gaming as a whole has gotten a whole lot more seasonal over the past few years, and this has also crept into the typically loyal MMO player bases as well. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the phrase tossed around for the likes of RuneScape or WoW that you never really quit, you only take breaks.
Yeah,
sometimes
I was about
those
to
breaks
say,
are weeks.
I was about to say when he first said that people leave World of Warcraft when they're disinterested and some people leave forever. And I was about to say, do you know a single person that played WoW for more than a year and actually left the game forever? Like, never came back?
Sometimes they are years, but eventually you'll decide to give it another go. But I've been someone that's followed WoW pretty closely now for quite a few years, and the amount of times that you see questions asked for, should I get back into, or is it too late to start for Classic, has always been on the high end, and significantly higher than, say, Modern WoW, for instance. And I think that's happening for a reason which isn't talked about all that much either. People are reaching their quit point in Classic WoW games sooner and in larger numbers than I think ordinarily you would playing an MMORPG. And this is a problem which has existed in Vanilla, TBC, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Season of Mastery, and even Season of Discovery to a certain degree, but Blizzard have started to do something about it. In fact, Mr. Pandaria is genuinely the first expansion in World of Warcraft where Blizzard made a serious effort to actually build content which slowed down the speed at which players reach their quit point.
Sure, yeah, but I don't know if daily quests are a good way to do it, because I think there is a lot of daily quests in Mist of Pandaria. I don't think you should burn out your players. I think quitting should be part of a game's, like of an MMORPG cycle. Yes, some people are going to play the same game for 20 years uninterrupted. They won't give a fuck. That's their game for life. But I think most people, they're there for a couple of days, months, weeks, until they reach the point where they have nothing else to do for their liking. They're going to move out to some other games. I mean, move out before they're burnt out. Like, just move out of the game because they just don't have anything to do. And they will come back once they want. Like, maybe it's going to be on the next expansion, maybe the next raid tier, maybe because there's a new event going on. And I think this is totally fine and should be accepted that players will do that in games. Because what happens, especially with games from Mist of Pandaria and over with Mythic Plus and very hard raids and infinite content, there's a lot of achievements, probably an infinite amount of mounts that you can grind, because it's really hard to have all the mounts in the game, and pets and transmog and all these things. What will happen is that the player will grind until he is completely burnt out of the game. And when you burn out your players, they will leave for a longer time. It will take years before they want to come back to your game because they've been burnt out. They might still come back, but it's going to take time.
And this quit point in MMOs is simple. You just run out of stuff to do. And the biggest moment when people gradually start to fade away from the game is when they hit a raid log status. Meaning simply you're logging in to complete whichever raids are active at the moment, and after that you log off for the week and don't really log in otherwise. Again though, much like reaching a personal point of conclusion in an MMO, raid logging isn't inherently a bad thing. If you love your raids and you want to play several characters and do them each week, then that's a great way to play the game, and it has been since Classic WoW dropped in 2019. It's just, if you wanted to say, log in and do something on your main, quite often during these classic games, there really isn't much else to do apart from raid log, and I don't think that's playing into the strength of what the MMO genre can typically provide. It's not surprising that things have ended up being this way after all. Classic games do not work how MMOs should do. You aren't supposed to know all the content that's coming in advance, and to have features that will be in the final patch.
That's a crazy good point. How many releases of Classic WoW have we had yet? 4, right? We have the normal Classic WoW in 2019. Then we add SOD, right? Then we have the Classic... No, Classic Era went first. SOD. We can even count Hardcore as a 4th one. Anniversary Realm, 5th. I think Classic WoW already got released 5 times, and that's only by Blizzard. And it's not counting any private servers.
From day one, or to have a good understanding of class balance before the game even releases. Imagine if WoW Midnight came out, people simmed the classes and found out the best specs, and Blizzard said, yeah, so we're just not gonna change this ever, I guess, have fun. I don't think that would go down particularly well, but that's how it works in Classic. And it's also worth bringing up here somewhere in the video, I don't think a sizable number of people are hitting their quit point mainly because of nostalgia wearing out. I mean, sure, these are re-releases of games, they always have an element of nostalgia to them. But if you're reaching level cap, let alone raid log status, you've invested some serious time into the game. Nostalgia, I think, really only gets your foot in the door and to start playing. What keeps you playing is it's just a good game. So why are people hitting this quit point? Will they run out of reasons to log in Vanilla Classic? Well, we can take a look at our current anniversary realms for a case study on how WoW Classic realms have played out time and again for many years. It's a slow start where the hardcore players get to 60 very fast because they get ahead of the pack and then they grind dungeons non-stop, so as a result there are very few raiders early on. As Molten Core becomes available, you see a rise in the player base week on week as more people hit level cap and are able to hop into the endgame content within Classic WoW. This happens because leveling simply takes a really long time. It's not unreasonable for level 60 to take people multiple weeks of grinding, if not months, depending on your free time. BWL then drops, and this is the peak moment for Classic raiding. It's enough time post-launch for a sizable number of players to have hit 60, and it's a new raid with amazing loot for people to get excited about. And so the Blackwing Lair release week nearly always sees the largest volume of players in Classic in raiding. From here on out, new raids will see a bump in players, as we indeed have with ZG, but then there's a decrease in each tier instead of player numbers consistently rising again. After Blackwing Lair, 2 things also happen. The ranking PvP grind opens up to rank 14, and you have AQ as the next major tier. Now we're going to save talking PvP for just a little bit later. As for AQ, well, it's not exactly Classic's most popular raid, is it? From having read tons of opinions around raiding in Classic so far, I'd say it's most people's worst raid. I never minded it that much personally, but I think it really depends on how hardcore your guild is, even if you are indeed raiding with a guild, that is. I've personally never pugged AQ, and I think that's why I don't really mind it that much, and believe me, I'm not about to. And AQ 40 is where things really start to take a downwards trend, because you've now been engaged in raiding since Molten Core to Blackwing Lair. There's ranking gear, which is just replacing a lot of the upgrades you could have been excited about from raids, and you've been consistently gold farming too. This is where the quit point really starts to hit for a lot of people. This is where the raid log begins. But we can look at the expansions we've had for Classic so far and realize they have extended the endgame beyond just raid and PvP. We've had things such as new reputations or achievements, for example, to try and give people something else to work towards when they're not raiding. But I don't believe a substantial amount of people are focusing on that area of the game.
That's true. I'm one that when I was not streaming, I was always farming achievements. That was my go-to in World of Warcraft. I really liked farming achievements, but every time I was talking to people in raid or in dungeons or other people that were doing achievements, it was really hard. There's a community around that, but there is very few people doing achievement points. And I think this is part of what retail is problematic with, is that there is too many things to do in retail. So there's a group doing Mythic Plus. There's a group doing raiding normal. There's another group doing heroic, mythic. There's another group doing achievements. Another one doing mounts. Another one doing RP. Another one doing pet battles. Is there people doing pet battles? Probably not. But maybe there's someone collecting it. There's someone doing transmog. There's someone doing, I don't know. There's too many things to do in Classic WoW that even if there's millions of, in retail WoW, even if there's millions of players, if that's still true, like there's groups of people, and it actually kills every single part of the game. Like, yes, you need to find ways for players to not just raid log or PvP, because yeah, PvP is not for everyone. But I think at some point you need to bring back the communities together. You need to bring back the players.
Most people, I bet the game is about leveling and then eventually getting into raiding. And I think it's natural things have gone in this way because it's, again, something that classic games tend to share. And this is a phrase I even remember hearing back in the day: all roads lead to raid. At level 60, you want to attune for raids. Your prebis is to perform better in raids. You level your professions, in part, to perform better in raids. You gather well buffs for raids. You farm gold for consumables for raids. In vanilla, you even do PvP for raids. And us having had several releases of the fresh version of the game now kind of also prove how people do quit more often and earlier in Classic. A lot more people seem to enjoy that first half of the vanilla experience, the leveling, the prebis, starting to raid, gearing up your character, and eventually hitting that raid log status, because that's the direction the game sends you. Then eventually you start to miss the times where there was...
That's true and not true. It is true today because people have done Classic WoW before. So the only thing they actually have left to do now is to, when they log back into the game, is to level up a new character, get to level max as fast as possible, and clear the raids. Because they have done professions, they have done the exploration. They don't need, it's not a new MMO. But when there's a new MMO, like just wait for any new MMO that will come out in the future and join that game and look at the player base. Not everybody will be raid logging. I can guarantee you. Why? Because there's still other things than raid logging in the game because it's new. But now it's not new. So like people, we've done Classic WoW multiple times already. There's nothing to explore. So we're just gonna raid.
Something to do every hour of every day in the game, and at this point that's where people start to make ults, so they can have that journey again. But repetition just is not the same as variety, and with each fresh the player base I think has changed in direction a little bit too. The guy who always played druid and that was their main class thinks, this time around I want to be on the top of the damage meters, I'm going to be rolling warrior. Or this time I'll be the guy making groups to hard reserve Dalrens till they drop. Or I'm going to get boosted this time instead of having to level again. Oh man, I can't be bothered farming all this gold again. People know their abyss items, they understand the consume meta more, and there's a lot more market inflation as well. And overall, I think a decent amount of players are rushing towards that moment where they quit faster than ever without even realizing it. And honestly, I don't think PvP really helps expand the endgame much beyond that either. Of course, PvP is an important activity that should always be part of Classic, but even with the ranking updates where you only need a certain amount of honor and there's no decay, it just feels lacking. When I say you do PvP to raid in vanilla, that's why I think most people enter Battlegrounds, unfortunate as though it may be. If that's not the case, then I guess people who are rank 14 right now on Anniversary Realms spent 200 hours running down AV purely for the fun of it, or so they can spend even more time in AV now because the other Battlegrounds...
I don't think I would run AV down for 200 hours for the fun of it. It might be fun for a bit. I'm not someone that likes grinding to rank 14. That's just me, and maybe some people like it. But I would like a better way of grinding rank 14 that doesn't include just spamming the same BG over and over. That doesn't even require you to do PvP, by the way. You're just rushing the enemy base and killing their what was it called? Like their captain, whatever it is, right? Like that doesn't make sense for PvP. Maybe rank 14. I was about to say something maybe a bit dumb. I was like, maybe rank 14 should only be obtainable with world PvP. But if you do that, people are going to farm level 59s in the zone. Like anybody that's questing in whatever part of the world, they will just farm them. I don't know how you could organize that. Maybe they could make events, like PvP events that would take place in different area of the game. Like exactly like they did in SOD. You have a PvP event that takes place in Blackrock Mountain every 2 hours for 1 hour. That could be a great way of implementing a PvP event, but you could do that in multiple places in the world. Basically like a battleground, but that just takes place in different area of the game, and you just go ahead and both factions, they bring like 2,000 people and they just smash each other to get that rank 14. I think that would probably be more fun than AV, in my opinion.
AV purely for the fun of it. Also, they can spend even more time in AV now because the other battlegrounds don't pop because no one wants to play them as they're bad honor per hour. And I bet on Anniversary Realms now too that the first wave of rank 14 players are done. You'll see queues start to appear for AV more often, and the game's quality will be drawn out and involve far more turtles because there are just less hardcore players there. And Battlegrounds and PvP and Classic just haven't done much of, well, anything to change, and they honestly haven't aged that well at all. I was a huge PvPer back in the day. Before WoW, I played RuneScape, and all I cared about there was PKing. When I swapped over to WoW back then, I'd spend endless hours watching the latest videos on Warcraft movies. I'd have no goal because I'd be constantly respecing to try different builds, and just be having fun on a bunch of different classes. Eventually, newer PvP games started to pop up, and in my opinion, took a sizable chunk out of the WoW PvP player base, such as League of Legends, simply because they offered a much...
I haven't thought about that, but it's true that World of Warcraft back in the day, it was probably one of the top PvP games, right? Like if you did arenas, it was probably one of the good games. It was probably one of the good games, but nowadays you have League of Legends that is purely focused on PvP. So like you can get your PvP experience in another game and get the PvP experience, PvE experience in World of Warcraft, which makes way more sense because World of Warcraft is most likely a PvE game. That is very interesting. Ragnarok Online and Ultima Online were good PvP MMOs too. Oh yeah, I believe it. Is that one of those MMORPG that had server versus server, or there was not one of those? PvP was mostly shooter games for the most case. Yeah, there was like Call of Duty, CSGO, there was like these games were king in PvP back in the day, yeah. I was one of those, by the way, when I have a PS3, when I was younger, I played a lot of Black Ops 2. A lot of Black Ops 2.
Much more streamlined path to get into PvP and only had to balance their games solely around that. And alongside these new PvP games came new ways to PvP or different game modes. Even World of Warcraft has embraced this as time went on. League of Legends nowadays, for example, has normal mode, they have ranked solo and duo, they have flex, they have ARAM, and a ton of limited time game modes such as Earth, One for All, Ultimate, Spellbook, Nexus Blitz, Doombots, and so many more. We can take this from a WoW perspective too about there being different game modes. Modern WoW has Random Battlegrounds, Epic Battlegrounds, 2v...
Yeah, but nobody plays them. Have you tried to queue for one of those? I was trying to queue for like Random Epic Battlegrounds. Arena Skirmish, maybe because it's fast, you can have a queue pop. But Brawl, Random Epic Battlegrounds, even Battlegrounds themselves, they almost never pop. Like it takes 5 to 10 minutes to even get a queue if you have all 3 of them queue at the same time.
2 Arena, 3v3 Arena, Solo Shuffle, Rated Battlegrounds, Battleground Blitz, and more. Even Marvel Rivals, which is still a pretty new game in the grand scheme of things, has multiple game modes, featuring arcade modes, holiday events, normal games, and ranked.
Events are fun.
These examples are from 3 different types of games and how they handle PvP. And all 3 do the same thing when it comes to PvP game modes. They have a normal or quick play mode. This is casual, fast to get into PvP. They have a ranked mode. This is where people go to test their skill, improve, and climb ranks. And they have temporary game modes. These change the rules of the game to offer a new perspective. Vanilla World of Warcraft has, and has only ever had, quick play. And quick play for me is when you're really just getting started with a game and familiarizing yourself with it. You want to jump in and see what's up before you get some understanding. And then you go into ranked or try out some temporary game modes whilst they're available. And to be honest, I wouldn't personally play a PvP game for very long if quick play is all it had to offer. Except in quick play in Classic WoW, you can get matched versus people in a full pre-made who will proceed to graveyard camp you till they decide to win. Now, as mentioned earlier, Season of Discovery initially started to work towards offering alternatives for Classic's typical endgame experiences. The Battle for Ashenvale and Blood Moon events gave people new ways to PvP for rewards. And though I'm all too aware people are going to understandably feel split on how well these events went, Blizzard at least tried.
This is a lie right there. This is a lie. It never happened this way. I think I've never seen the other faction going into the other faction and fighting each other in SOD. It was literally just both of us on our own bases trying to kill the NPC as fast as possible to get our honor points. Maybe in the very early weeks, like the first week and maybe the second one. It could have been a good event, but they really did it bad. The good one was the Blood Moon event. That one was awesome. I really loved it. I would even like them to implement this in like the Anniversary Realm or Classic Plus if they ever make it.
Understandably feel split on how well these events went, Blizzard at least tried something new for the endgame, so I have to commend them for that. Equally, there has been some new non-raid content, such as profession-related quests, new gold farms with player power growth, secret quest lines to uncover, and Konsu to name a few. But this seasonal server has fallen back into the typical old ways of vanilla, where it is very much a raid-centric experience. Then again, it is a seasonal server, and they're not going to have time to focus on fleshing out the content as much as they perhaps would have liked to. So people are having these moments where they quit in Classic, and I think it's down to a lack of options at endgame, both from PvP not keeping players about due to the lack of options, and the rest of the game leading down a road that ends in raiding. And you know what? That is fine. It's fine for Classic era, and it's fine for the Anniversary realms, because that is what they are, and that is what they have always been. If you want your no changes Classic, it is right there, and it's available to go back to at any point in time. But I really hope this isn't all we can expect from Classic games forever, because for a future beyond just being re-releases for Classic, I truly believe the endgame has to offer more varied experiences than it currently does in its base vanilla version. And I am hopeful that Blizzard will deliver on this one day, and that there will be a game called Classic Plus, or something along that line. The things that I've gone over in this video are ultimately problems which I believe Classic Plus must address if it's going to pave a new world for Classic WoW fans to keep enjoying the game long term, rather than us going back to those same quit points that we can observe over years of case studies. Will it mean taking some things from other versions of WoW? Absolutely it will, yes. You know old school RuneScape? The MMO with a recreation has surpassed the game that it was made from? Yeah, that contains literally dozens of updates from RuneScape 2 and 3, which have been reskinned and made to fit within the old school world, and people actively voted for them to be added too. Not everything from the future is bad, and I suppose I'll have to answer this question here because I am sure to see it in the comments. Why not play retail if you want things to change? Well, here's a better question. Why not stick to one of the two versions of WoW that exist in Era and Anniversary, specifically made to cater to people who don't want changes? But that is about all I have for today. Just a topic which I felt like making a video on for some time, going over some thoughts on how Classic realms typically play out, and maybe what they could consider changing in the future. So I'll end with a question. What content would you want to see in Classic Plus which expands the end game? Solo shuffle?
Blood Moon event was fine. Solo shuffle? I am very against instance content in Classic Plus. I want Classic Plus to be an MMO. And I don't want it to be, I just stand in town and queue for my next solo shuffle. I don't want Classic WoW to come back into that. If they ever make Classic Plus, they need to make a way so there's open world content, more open world content. That's what I want.
Rated 1v1s, Brawlers Guild, Mage Tower, Delves? What do you think it would make sense to add within the game? Let me know below. And, as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
That's a good idea, by the way. The Mage Tower. We could have a classic Mage Tower, a challenge that is specifically tailored toward your class. Perfect. Good video, by the way. Very good video. I'll post it in chat if you guys want to give him a sub, a like. That was really good.